Hi Year 4, how nice to see you all. Hope you've had a good week, managed to keep busy and have some fun. Hope you've been able to get out and have some nice walks. We've really enjoyed our walks, haven't we, Rusty? And it's been very sunny, which has been lovely, but also we have to keep super careful in the sun, don't we? I can use sun cream, but Rusty can't because of his fur, so he just covers up and wears sunglasses and he's fine then. So we've been off out, totally safe and able to enjoy our walks. Hope you do the same. Anyway, hope you've been managing to keep busy in the house too. Get all your schoolwork done and hopefully some reading as well. Which brings us to this week's story, Fearless Fitzroy, about a very, very lazy cat. So settle down and here we go. Fearless Fitzroy. Fearless Fitzroy Mouser was a laid-back cat. He slept, he dozed, he stretched, he snoozed, he lazed, he purred, he barely stirred. He yawned and sighed, sometimes opened one eye, but only got up to eat his food. The rest of the time he lazed and dozed while the dust piled up on the end of his nose. Nothing disturbed Fitzroy, not noise, not rats, not shocks or shadows. Fitzroy was fearless. Well, almost. But there was just one nightmare, the nightmare every cat grows up to dread, which could make him sweat and shake with terror. It was the nightmare of the deadly dangling mouse monster. No, 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 Fitzroy would whimper, as this terrible dangling creature with its pointy nose, its eyes on stalks, and its huge sharp biting teeth made him shudder and twitch. Oh, it's only a dream, and he'd roll over and try to go on sleeping. Now Fitzroy lived and worked, if you can call it work, in a big dry warehouse full of famous chocolate biscuits. His job was to keep out birds and rats, insects and bats, but most of all mice. Mice, 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 especially the chocolate biscuit eating kind. For this, he got 2 good meals a day, regular as clockwork. In return, did Fitzroy hunt and pounce and guard the stores? Absolutely not. Fitzroy snoozed. Mouse parents for miles around thought Fitzroy was just perfect for cat practice. They brought their children along in rows to teach them what every young mouse needs to know about cats and to feast on the chocolate biscuits. Mouse children for miles around longed to be big enough to see fearless Fitzroy for themselves, but big enough they had to be. When your ears touch the top of the mouse hole and your paws reach from side to side, then you can go, but not before. That was the rule. Among many mouse parents living near the famous chocolate biscuits warehouse were 2 sisters, Meza and Mila Mouse. They lived in neighbouring nests, and between them they had so many children they could scarcely keep track. Meza had 11 mouselets and Mila had 12. Well, that's what she always said, but in fact Mila had 13. It was just that the smallest of the litter, Piccolini by name, was so skinny and small that she didn't really count. Piccolini was tiny. She had small bright eyes, a very small nose and an even smaller squeak. She had little puny legs, a thread of a tail, and grey fur so pale she was almost invisible. And as she tripped over her big baby feet in the rumpus of all her brothers and sisters and cousins, nobody even noticed she was there. How Piccolini longed to be big. She did everything she could to catch up with her brothers and sisters and cousins, but it was no good. Her ears were never going to touch the top of the mouse hole. Her paws were never going to reach from side to side. But was that going to stop her? No. What Piccolini lacked in size, she made up for in determination. So when at last the day came when all the other mouselets were big enough to go and see fearless Fitzroy, Piccolini was ready. As they all lined up to do the mousehole test, she jumped up under the belly of her biggest, sturdiest brother and hid in his thick, soft fur until they were safely through. And did anyone notice? Of course not. That morning at the biscuit warehouse, it seemed much the same as any other. When Fitzroy opened one lazy eye, there was nothing to keep him awake. And as Meza and Mila and the mouse children set out along the runs and tunnels towards him, nothing looked unusual. But this day was a day with a difference, because without any warning, the owner of the warehouse, the king of the chocolate biscuits, the provider of the cat food, the boss Fitzroy had never met, Mr. Fame himself, paid an unexpected visit. Mr. Fame was a very busy man. He had 5 motor cars, 4 offices, 3 houses, 2 yachts, 1 private plane, and oh yes, the famous chocolate biscuits empire to run. As long as everything ran smoothly, he didn't bother himself with what went on in the warehouse. In fact, it wasn't clear that he'd ever been to his warehouse before. But recently, complaints had started to reach him from smart shops around the world. They complained about biscuits with holes in the middle and nibbles around the edges, about biscuits with paw prints in the chocolate and tooth marks on the wrappers. And Mr. Fame decided it was time to act. So on this very morning, as Meza and Mila and all the little mouse children were setting out, he swept down to Fitzroy's home in his chauffeur-driven limousine to take a look for himself. Mr. Fame looked hard. He noticed the mess. He noticed the mouse droppings. He noticed the open crates and the leaky packets and the trail of biscuit crumbs and chocolate chips all over the floor. And then he noticed Fitzroy, who of course didn't notice anything at all because he was fast asleep and snoring, as usual. "I might have guessed," he thundered. "Sloppy staff, bad management. That cat will have to go." And punching the number of Cat Killers Incorporated angrily into his mobile phone, he stormed out. The dust had barely settled behind Mr. Fame's car when Meza and Mila counted their mouselets into the warehouse through a hole in the floor. 1, 2, 3, 11, 15, 22, 23. Good. Ammy, squeaked Piccolini, jumping up and down, but nobody noticed. There in front of them lay the mighty Fitzroy, huge and snoring. "Oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow," breathed the mouselets. "Right," said Mila, arranging them in rows. "Now pay attention, because this is possibly the most important lesson of your whole lives." And as Meza took up position by Fitzroy's side, Mila climbed up on a packet of famous chocolate biscuits and began. "Item 1, she squeaked as Meza rolled one of Fitzroy's big paws over. "Inside these soft paws there are claws as sharp as knives. If you give them a chance, they will cut you in 2. Item 2, mouth and jaws. Very big teeth in there. They'll crunch you up, so mice beware. Item 3, said Mila, as Meza lifted one of Fitzroy's eyelids. These are the eyes, cat's-eye spies that can see in the dark. Little mice, if you're wise, hide, don't get spied. Item 4, as Meza wrapped Fitzroy's tail around her neck like a fake fur collar. A tail tells you a lot. If you once see it flick, you know a cat's angry, so mice get out quick. On went the lesson. The little mice listened, eyes wide, deeply impressed to find themselves so close to such a huge and dangerous creature. Most of them listened, but Piccolini was dozing off. All that running had tired her out, even though she'd hitched a ride on one of her big sister's tails for the last part of the journey. Now she found it hard to concentrate. She found it hard to stay awake. The lesson droned on and on. Okay, going to leave it there. Please click straight on to the second part to continue the story.